There's a moment in every person's life when they stand at a crossroads between two completely different futures. One path leads to mediocrity, regret, and a life of quiet desperation. The other leads to extraordinary achievement, fulfillment, and the kind of life that most people only dream about. The difference between these two paths isn't talent, luck, or circumstances. The difference is a single decision about how you're going to think about failure. Most people live their entire lives preparing for failure. They keep backup plans for their backup plans. They invest more energy in protecting themselves from disappointment than they do in creating success. They spend more time thinking about what could go wrong than what could go right. And then they wonder why their lives don't turn out the way they hoped. Let me tell you what I've learned about this idea of acting as if failure is not an option. Most folks misunderstand what this means. They think it's about being naive or ignoring reality. That's not it at all. Acting as if failure is not an option isn't about denying that setbacks can happen. It's about choosing which thoughts you're going to allow to dominate your mind. You see, your mind can only focus on one dominant thought at a time. You can either spend your mental energy preparing for success or preparing for failure, but you can't do both effectively. Here's what I discovered early in my own life. I was 25 years old and not doing very well. I had pennies in my pocket and promises I couldn't keep. I was working hard, but I wasn't working smart, and I certainly wasn't thinking right. I remember the day everything changed for me. I was talking to my mentor, Mr. Schoaf, and I was explaining all the reasons why my dreams might not work out. I had a whole list of excuses ready. I was prepared for failure in every possible way. Mr. Schoaf listened patiently, and then he said something that stopped me cold. He said, "Jim, you're spending more time planning your retreat than you are planning your advance. No wonder you're not getting ahead." That hit me like a lightning bolt. I realized I had been unconsciously preparing for defeat. I was like a general who spent all his time planning his army's withdrawal instead of planning the victory. You know what happens when you constantly think about what might go wrong? Your mind becomes incredibly creative at finding ways for things to go wrong. It's like having a brilliant strategist working against you 24 hours a day. Instead of looking for opportunities, you start looking for obstacles. Instead of seeing possibilities, you start seeing problems. Instead of asking, "How can I make this work?" you start asking, "What if this doesn't work?" Let me share a story that illustrates this perfectly. There was once a farmer who decided to cross a dangerous river with his family to reach better land on the other side. Now, this farmer could have built a bridge and kept it there as an escape route. He could have kept his boat tied up on the shore just in case things didn't work out, but this farmer was different. Once his family crossed that river, he burned the bridge behind them. His neighbors thought he was crazy. "What if the new land doesn't work out?" they asked. "What if you want to come back?" The farmer smiled and said, "Now I have no choice but to make it work." And you know what? He did. That act of burning his bridge forced him to put all his energy, all his creativity, all his determination into making his new life successful. He couldn't waste time looking backward because there was nowhere to go back to. The truth is, most people keep too many escape routes open. They say they want to succeed, but they spend half their time preparing for the possibility that they won't. They keep their old job while starting their new business, but not wholeheartedly. They say they want to lose weight, but they keep all their large clothes just in case. They say they want to change their life, but they hold on to all the habits and thinking patterns that created their current results. Here's what I want you to understand. When you act as if failure is not an option, something magical happens in your mind. You stop being creative about excuses and start being creative about solutions. You stop looking for ways out and start looking for ways through. You stop asking, "What if I fail?" and start asking, "How can I succeed?" I learned this lesson the hard way during my first serious attempt at building wealth. I was scared to death of losing what little money I had, so I kept looking for safe investments, sure bets, guaranteed returns. But here's what I discovered. When you're always looking for guarantees, you miss the real opportunities. The people who were making serious money weren't looking for safety. They were looking for ways to create value, to solve problems, to serve people better. The difference between hope and certainty is enormous. Hope says, I wish this would work out. Certainty says, I will find a way to make this work out. Hope keeps looking for proof before taking action. Certainty takes action to create the proof. Hope waits for conditions to be perfect. Certainty creates perfect conditions through commitment and persistent action. When you truly adopt the mindset that failure is not an option, your whole approach to challenges changes. Instead of seeing obstacles as reasons to quit, you see them as puzzles to solve. Instead of seeing setbacks as signs that you should give up, you see them as feedback that helps you adjust your approach. Instead of seeing criticism as proof that you're on the wrong path, you see it as information that helps you improve. But let me be clear about something. Acting as if failure is not an option doesn't mean you'll never face difficulties or make mistakes. What it means is that you refuse to let temporary setbacks become permanent defeats. It means you view every experience as either a success or a learning opportunity, never as a failure. It means you're committed to finding a way forward no matter what obstacles appear in your path. The most successful people I've known all share this characteristic. They simply don't spend mental energy on the possibility of ultimate failure. They might adjust their methods, they might change their tactics, they might even completely alter their approach, but they never change their commitment to eventual success. They understand that the mind that is constantly preparing for failure will find ways to fail, and the mind that is constantly preparing for success will find ways to succeed. Now, here's what happens when you make this mental shift. You move from being interested in success to being committed to success, and let me tell you, there's a world of difference between those two positions. Interest will get you started, but only commitment will get you finished. When you're interested in something, you do it when it's convenient. When you're committed to something, you accept no excuses, only results. I want to share with you one of the most powerful stories I know about the difference total commitment makes. There was a great military leader who took his army across the sea to fight a much larger enemy force. When his ships reached the shore and his soldiers had unloaded all their equipment, this general gave an order that shocked everyone. He told his men to burn all the ships, every single one. His soldiers thought he had lost his mind. General, they said, how will we get home if we lose the battle? The general looked at his men and said something that changed the entire course of that war. He said, that's exactly the point. We're not going home unless we win. Now we have only one option, victory. You know what happened? Those soldiers fought like their lives depended on it, because they did. They couldn't retreat, they couldn't surrender, they couldn't give up and go home. They had to find a way to win, and they did. Against overwhelming odds, they won. Here's the lesson I learned from that story. When you give yourself an escape route, part of your mind is always calculating how and when you might use it. When you remove all escape routes, your mind has no choice but to focus completely on success. It's like the difference between a river that spreads out across a plain and a river that's channeled through a canyon. The spreading river has no power, but that same water channeled through a narrow space becomes a tremendous force. Most people operate at about 40% of their capability because they always keep something in reserve, just in case. They don't want to look foolish by trying too hard. They don't want to be disappointed if things don't work out. So they hedge their bets. They keep one foot in their old life while they tentatively step into their new life. But here's what I've discovered. Partial commitment leads to partial results every time. Let me tell you about my own experience with this principle. When I first started in business, I kept my options open. I had my main job, which I called my security, and I had my business venture, which I called my opportunity. But I noticed something troubling. Whenever my business got challenging, I would unconsciously slack off because I knew I had my regular paycheck coming in. Whenever my job got stressful, I would daydream about my business instead of focusing on doing excellent work where I was. One day, my mentor, Mr. Schoaf, asked me a question that changed everything. He said, Jim, what would happen if you put the same energy into your business that you put into making excuses for why it's not working? That hit home. I realized I was trying to walk on two paths at the same time, and as a result, I wasn't making real progress on either one. That's when I made one of the most important decisions of my life. I decided to go all in. I didn't quit my job irresponsibly, but I made a commitment that within 6 months my business would be successful enough to support me, or I would know exactly why it wasn't and what I needed to change. I stopped spending my mental energy on backup plans and started investing all of it in making my primary plan work. The results were immediate and dramatic. When I stopped preparing for failure, I started preparing for success. Instead of spending my evenings watching television and relaxing, I spent them studying, planning, and building my business. Instead of making excuses for why prospects said no, I started studying why they said no and how I could present my opportunity more effectively. Instead of blaming the economy or the competition or bad luck, I started taking complete responsibility for my results. You know what I discovered? When you're totally committed to something, you become incredibly creative about making it work. Problems that used to stop you become puzzles that you solve. Obstacles that used to discourage you become challenges that you overcome. Setbacks that used to defeat you become learning experiences that make you stronger and wiser. Here's another way to think about it. Have you ever noticed the difference between how an eagle and a chicken respond to a storm? When storm clouds gather, chickens run for cover. They find a safe place to hide and wait for the storm to pass. But eagles do something completely different. Eagles use the storm. They spread their wings and let the storm winds carry them higher than they could ever fly on their own power. The same storm that sends chickens running for safety lifts eagles to new heights. The difference isn't in their circumstances. They both face the same storm. The difference is in their response. Chickens are always looking for security and safety. Eagles are always looking for opportunity and growth. When you act as if failure is not an option, you stop being a chicken looking for safety and start being an eagle looking for opportunities to soar. But here's something most people don't understand about commitment. True commitment isn't just about working harder. It's about thinking differently. When you're truly committed, you don't just try harder at the same things that aren't working. You become willing to change your approach, to learn new skills, to get uncomfortable, to do whatever it takes to get the results you're committed to achieving. I learned this lesson from watching truly successful people. They don't just have more willpower than everyone else. They have more clarity about what they want and more commitment to doing whatever it takes to get it. They understand that the universe rewards clarity and commitment. When you know exactly what you want and you're absolutely committed to getting it, opportunities start appearing that you never noticed before. The truth is, most people fail not because they're not capable, but because they're not committed. They want success, but they're not willing to pay the price. They want the rewards, but they're not willing to take the risks. They want the destination, but they're not willing to take the journey. They're interested in success, but they're not committed to it. When you make the shift from interest to commitment, everything changes. Your energy changes, your focus changes, your persistence changes, your creativity changes. You stop making excuses and start making progress. You stop looking for reasons why it won't work and start finding ways to make it work. You stop being a victim of your circumstances and start being the architect of your future. But here's where most people get it wrong about this philosophy. They think that acting as if failure is not an option means you just think positive thoughts and everything will work out magically. That's not wisdom, that's wishful thinking. Real wisdom understands that there's a tremendous difference between knowing the path and walking the path. You can know all about success principles, but until you apply them daily in your actual life, they're just interesting ideas. Let me tell you what I mean. I once knew a man who had read every success book ever written. He could quote Napoleon Hill, Dale Carnegie, and Norman Vincent Peale from memory. He knew all the principles, all the strategies, all the methods. But you know what? He was broke. His life was a mess. His relationships were failing. All that knowledge wasn't doing him any good because he wasn't walking the path, he was just studying the map. The real secret is learning how to train your mind to automatically think in terms of solutions instead of problems. This doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen by accident. It happens through daily practice and conscious choice. Every single day, you have thousands of opportunities to choose your dominant thoughts. Most people let these choices happen unconsciously, and then they wonder why their lives aren't working out the way they want. Here's a simple but powerful practice that changed my life. Every morning before I do anything else, I spend 15 minutes asking myself 3 questions. First, what can I be grateful for today? Second, what opportunities can I create today? Third, how can I serve someone today? These questions set the tone for my entire day because they focus my mind on abundance instead of scarcity, on possibilities instead of problems, on contribution instead of just consumption. You see, the quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions you ask yourself. Most people ask themselves terrible questions all day long. They ask things like, why does this always happen to me? Or what if this doesn't work out? Or why can't I ever get ahead? Your mind is like a powerful computer, and whatever question you ask it, it will work night and day to find you an answer. Ask lousy questions, get lousy answers. Ask empowering questions, get empowering answers. I learned this from my mentor, Mr. Schoaf, and let me tell you how he taught it to me. I was complaining to him one day about how hard it was to build a business. I was asking him why everything seemed so difficult for me when it appeared easy for other people. He listened patiently, and then he said something I'll never forget. He said, Jim, you're asking the wrong question. Instead of asking why it's so hard, start asking how you can make it easier. Instead of asking why you can't get ahead, start asking what you need to learn to get ahead. Change your questions, and you'll change your life. That simple advice transformed everything for me. Instead of asking, can I do this, I started asking, how can I do this? Instead of asking, what if I fail, I started asking, what do I need to learn to succeed? Instead of asking, why don't I have more money? I started asking, how can I create more value for other people? The shift in my thinking was immediate, and the shift in my results followed shortly after. But here's something else that's absolutely crucial. You must guard your mind like you guard your wallet. You wouldn't let just anyone reach into your pocket and take your money, but most people let anyone and everyone deposit negative thoughts into their minds. They watch the news for hours, filling their minds with problems they can't solve. They listen to negative people complain about everything that's wrong with the world. They read about disasters and difficulties and disappointments until their minds are completely focused on everything that could go wrong. Your mind is your most valuable asset, and you must protect it carefully. I make it a practice to spend time every day with people who think bigger than I do, who dream bigger than I do, who expect more from life than I do. I read books by people who have achieved what I want to achieve. I listen to ideas that challenge me to grow and improve. I deliberately expose my mind to thoughts and concepts that inspire me and motivate me and educate me. Let me share a story that illustrates this perfectly. There was a man who wanted to lose 50 pounds, but he kept failing at every diet he tried. He would start with great enthusiasm, but within a few weeks he would give up and go back to his old eating habits. This pattern went on for years until one day a friend asked him a simple question. If you really want to lose weight, why do you keep buying clothes in larger sizes? The man was puzzled by the question at first, but then he realized what his friend was getting at. Unconsciously, he was preparing for failure. Every time he bought new clothes, he bought them in the size he currently wore or even larger, just in case he gained more weight. He was never buying clothes for the size he wanted to become. His closet was full of evidence that he expected to stay overweight or get even heavier. That revelation changed everything for him. He went home and cleaned out his closet. He got rid of all his large clothes and bought a few outfits in the size he wanted to be. Now he had no choice but to lose the weight. Nothing in his closet would fit him if he didn't. Within 6 months, he had lost the 50 pounds and has kept it off ever since. The lesson is this: if you want to succeed at something, stop preparing for failure. Stop buying insurance against your own success. Stop keeping escape routes open. Stop surrounding yourself with evidence that you don't really believe in your goals. Start acting like the person you want to become, and you'll become that person. But what do you do when doubt creeps in? Because it will. Even when you're totally committed, even when you're asking the right questions, even when you're guarding your mind carefully, there will still be moments when you feel uncertain. This is normal and natural. The key is understanding the difference between healthy preparation and destructive worry. Healthy preparation says, what skills do I need to develop? What knowledge do I need to gain? What relationships do I need to build? Destructive worry says, what if this doesn't work? What if I'm not good enough? What if I make a fool of myself? Preparation focuses on what you can control. Worry focuses on what you can't control. When doubt comes, and it will, don't fight it or pretend it doesn't exist. Acknowledge it, and then redirect your energy toward action. Doubt is just your mind's way of asking if you're really serious about your goals. The answer isn't found in thinking more about it. The answer is found in taking the next step forward despite the doubt. You must also become comfortable being uncomfortable. Success requires you to do things you've never done before, and that always feels uncomfortable at first. Most people avoid discomfort at all costs, but successful people understand that discomfort is just the price of growth. Every time you feel uncomfortable because you're stretching beyond your current abilities, celebrate. That discomfort is evidence that you're growing. Here's another practical strategy that most people overlook: the power of daily disciplines. You see, success isn't about making one big decision and then coasting. Success is about making small, positive decisions consistently, day after day, week after week, year after year. It's about doing the right things when you don't feel like doing them, especially when you don't feel like doing them. Let me tell you about a conversation I had with a successful businessman who owned 12 companies. I asked him what his secret was, expecting some profound business strategy or some brilliant insight about market timing. His answer surprised me. He said, "Jim, I do the same 6 things every single day, whether I feel like it or not. I read for at least 1 hour to feed my mind. I exercise for at least 30 minutes to strengthen my body. I spend time with my family to nurture my relationships. I review my goals to keep my focus clear. I do something to serve others to keep my heart right. And I plan tomorrow before today ends to stay ahead of the game." That's when I understood something profound. Extraordinary results come from doing ordinary things extraordinarily well, consistently over time. Most people are looking for the magic formula, the secret shortcut, the overnight breakthrough. But the real magic is in the daily disciplines. It's in doing what you know you should do, when you should do it, whether you feel like it or not. The compound effect of small daily actions is staggering. If you read just 10 pages of a good book every day, you'll read over 18 books in a year. If you exercise just 20 minutes every day, you'll be in the best shape of your life within 12 months. If you make one additional sales call every day, you'll make over 250 extra contacts in a year. Small daily disciplines create major breakthroughs over time. But here's what separates those who succeed from those who don't: accountability. You must find a way to hold yourself accountable for your daily actions. Most people have good intentions, but intentions without accountability are just wishes. I keep a daily scorecard where I track whether I've done the important activities that move me toward my goals. It's simple, but it works. You can't manage what you don't measure. Now, let me share with you the ultimate secret. When you truly adopt this philosophy of acting as if failure is not an option, you don't just change your results, you change who you are. You transform from someone who hopes things will work out to someone who makes things work out. You evolve from someone who reacts to circumstances to someone who creates circumstances. You become, in the truest sense, the architect of your own destiny. This transformation reminds me of something I learned about butterflies. You know, a caterpillar doesn't just grow wings and become a butterfly. The process is much more profound than that. Inside the cocoon, the caterpillar completely dissolves. It literally becomes soup. Then from that liquid, something entirely new is created. A creature that can fly, that sees the world from heights the caterpillar never imagined possible. The butterfly and the caterpillar share the same DNA, but they're completely different beings. That's what happens when you truly commit to this way of thinking and living. You don't just get better results with the same old approach. You become someone fundamentally different. Your whole identity shifts. Where you once saw obstacles, you now see opportunities. Where you once felt limitations, you now sense possibilities. Where you once asked, "What if I fail?" you now ask, "How can I serve?" I've watched this transformation happen in my own life and in the lives of countless others. When I was 25 and struggling, I thought success was about getting lucky or having the right connections or being in the right place at the right time. I was looking outside myself for the answers. But when I shifted to this mindset of refusing to accept failure as an option, everything changed. I stopped being a victim of my circumstances and started being the creator of my circumstances. The ripple effects were immediate and far-reaching. My relationships improved because I stopped blaming other people for my problems and started taking responsibility for my own happiness. My health improved because I stopped making excuses for poor habits and started making choices that honored my body. My finances improved because I stopped waiting for opportunities and started creating them. My whole life improved because I stopped preparing for failure and started preparing for success. But here's what's even more powerful. This transformation affects everyone around you. When you operate from a place of certainty rather than doubt, when you focus on solutions rather than problems, when you commit completely rather than partially, people notice. They're drawn to that kind of energy. They want to be around someone who believes in possibilities, who makes things happen, who refuses to accept defeat. You become a leader not because you have a title or a position, but because you have a different way of thinking and being. People start coming to you for advice, for encouragement, for partnership. They see something in you that they want for themselves. You become a source of hope and inspiration for others, not through your words, but through your example. Let me tell you about one of my students who understood this principle deeply. He was a young man from a poor family who decided he wanted to become wealthy so he could help other people escape poverty. Now, he could have spent his time complaining about how unfair life was, how the system was rigged against people like him, how he didn't have the advantages that others had. Instead, he decided that his background would become his strength, not his weakness. He studied everything he could about wealth creation. He worked 3 jobs while going to school. He saved every penny he could and invested it wisely. He surrounded himself with people who thought bigger than he did. He refused to let temporary setbacks become permanent defeats. Most importantly, he never allowed himself to consider the possibility that he wouldn't achieve his goal. Today, that young man is a millionaire many times over. But that's not the most impressive part of his story. The most impressive part is what he's done with his success. He's created thousands of jobs in his community. He's funded scholarships for young people from backgrounds similar to his. He's built housing for families who couldn't otherwise afford it. He's become a force for positive change in the world, and it all started with a decision to act as if failure was not an option. That's the true power of this philosophy. It doesn't just change your bank account or your lifestyle, it changes your impact on the world. When you refuse to accept failure as an option for yourself, you inspire others to refuse to accept failure for themselves. You become part of the solution to the problems you see around you. But let me be honest with you about something. This isn't about perfection. This journey isn't smooth and it isn't easy. There will be times when you doubt yourself, when you feel like giving up, when the obstacles seem too big and the goals seem too far away. That's normal. That's part of the process. The key is understanding that these difficult seasons are temporary if you don't make them permanent. Life has seasons, just like nature does. There are seasons of planting, seasons of growing, seasons of harvesting, and seasons of rest. The farmer doesn't plant seeds in winter and expect them to grow immediately. He understands that everything has its proper timing. But he also doesn't stop being a farmer just because it's winter. He uses that time to prepare for the next planting season. When you're going through a difficult season, remember that it's not permanent unless you make it permanent. Keep doing the daily disciplines. Keep asking the right questions. Keep guarding your mind. Keep associating with positive, growth-minded people. Keep moving forward, even if it's just one small step at a time. The season will change, and when it does, you'll be ready to harvest the rewards of your persistence. Here's what I want you to understand about legacy. The greatest gift you can give to the world is not your success. It's your example of what's possible when someone refuses to quit, refuses to make excuses, refuses to accept defeat. Your life becomes a testament to the power of human potential. You become proof that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary results when they commit extraordinary effort to worthy goals. The decision is yours. You can continue to live like most people do, hoping for the best but preparing for the worst, wanting success but accepting mediocrity, dreaming about a better life but settling for what you have. Or you can make a different choice. You can decide right here and right now to act as if failure is not an option. You can become the architect of your own destiny, the creator of your own circumstances, the author of your own story. The choice you make will determine not just what you have, but who you become. And who you become will determine not just your own destiny, but your impact on everyone whose life you touch. Choose wisely. Choose courageously. Choose to act as if failure is not an option, and watch as your entire world transform.